It started like any other afternoon on the outskirts of Atlanta. The summer heat simmered above the pavement, making the road shimmer like a mirage. Officer Daniels, a 12-year veteran of the force, cruised down a quiet suburban stretch behind the wheel of his patrol car. His arm rested casually on the window ledge, his mirrored sunglasses reflecting neat lawns, parked SUVs, and the occasional jogger sweating through their afternoon route. He wasn't expecting anything out of the ordinary. Not here, not in this zip code. Then he saw it. A sleek, black BMW glided past the intersection ahead, barely above a crawl. Brand new, tinted windows, polished to a mirror finish. Daniel's eyes narrowed behind the shades. The car itself wasn't a problem. The neighborhood was affluent enough for that. But when he caught a glimpse of the driver, a young, clean-shaven black man in a tailored navy suit, something twisted in his gut. A well-dressed black man in a luxury car? His fingers tapped the steering wheel. He didn't like it, didn't trust it. Without a second thought, he flicked on his siren and pulled into traffic. The BMW slowed and obediently rolled to the curb. Daniels parked behind it and took his time getting out. He adjusted his belt, tugged at his vest, and strutted toward the driver's side window with a kind of smirk that didn't quite reach his eyes. The window rolled down with a faint hum. "License and registration," he barked. The man handed them over with practiced ease. His expression remained calm, unreadable. Daniels took the documents but didn't glance at them. He already had his narrative. "Step out of the car," he said. The man tilted his head slightly. "Officer, is there a reason you pulled me over?" Daniels stiffened. "You match the description of a suspect," he lied, voice cold and clipped. "Now, get out." The man paused for a moment, not in fear, but as if weighing the gravity of what was unfolding. Then, he opened the door and stepped out with a kind of poise that made Daniels itch. He was tall, maybe mid-30s, with a sharp jaw and watchful eyes. Everything about him was composed, too composed. Daniels squared his shoulders. "Hands where I can see them." The man raised them, slowly. "You want to tell me what this is really about, officer?" he asked, voice like glass, smooth but liable to cut. Daniels bristled. "Turn around. Hands on the hood." He reached for his cuffs. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," the man said quietly. Daniels froze. "Excuse me." The man held his gaze. "Check my ID again." "Properly." Reluctantly, Daniels glanced down at the license he'd ignored earlier, and then his blood ran cold. "Malcolm Reed, Assistant U.S. Attorney, Federal Crimes Division." Daniels blinked, looked again. Tucked into the paperwork was an official DOJ badge, the real kind. Reed raised an eyebrow. "So, officer, still think I match a description?" Daniels stammered, his hand twitching near his belt. I didn't." "You did," Reed cut in. "And everything you just said and did is recorded." He nodded to the small, blinking device clipped to his lapel. "Body cam of my own. Standard practice these days." Daniel stepped back, suddenly aware of how quiet the street had become. A couple across the road had stopped watering their garden. A kid peeked from behind a porch column. Reed didn't lower his hands. He didn't have to. "You should call your supervisor," he said, voice even. "Now." Officer Daniels stood frozen, the reality sinking in like cement. This was no ordinary man, and he had just made a very costly mistake. The driver, a composed man in his early 50s, slowly stepped out of the vehicle, every movement deliberate, his hands raised and clearly visible. His suit jacket shifted slightly with emotion, revealing a glimpse of something clipped to his belt, but Daniels was too locked into his assumption to notice. The man didn't speak at first. He simply stood there, tall, self-assured, his presence unsettling in its quiet control. "Put your hands on the car," Daniels barked, gesturing sharply. Still no reaction, no resistance. The man turned slowly, placing both palms flat on the hood of the BMW with the grace of someone used to navigating hostile rooms, courtrooms, maybe. Boardrooms, not traffic stops like this. Daniel stepped in behind him, cuffs already in hand, the heat from the car's hood rising like steam. But just as he reached forward, the man finally spoke. His voice was low, firm, measured, the kind of tone that carried authority without needing to raise it. "Officer," he said calmly, Are you sure you want to go down this path? Daniel stiffened. Something about the phrasing, the weight behind it, pierced through his bravado. Still, pride and adrenaline wouldn't let him back down. Are you threatening me? He snapped. The man didn't turn around. I'm simply asking. That was enough. The cuffs clicked around the man's wrists. Daniels felt a petty sense of control rush over him, until the sound of another engine pulling up behind him snapped him back. Backup had arrived. Officer Riley, a younger patrolman with just 5 years on the force, stepped out of the second cruiser. His casual pace slowed as soon as he saw the man being held against the car. Then he stopped altogether. His mouth opened slightly. His brow creased. His face lost its color like a wave had crashed over him. Daniels, Riley said, barely above a whisper, "What the hell are you doing?" Daniels looked over, confused by his tone. "What does it look like?" "Detaining a suspect." Riley took a step forward, his eyes locked on the man in cuffs. "Do you even know who that is?" Daniel shrugged, still defensive. "No, and I don't care." He was acting suspicious. "That's Marcus Green." Riley cut in, his voice tight with alarm. "That's the Marcus Green." Daniels blinked. "Who?" Riley looked like he wanted to vanish into the ground. He leaned in, his voice now a hiss. "That's the head of internal affairs. Our department's top watchdog. He reports directly to the chief and the mayor's office." The words hit Daniels like a blow to the chest. He turned back to the man slowly, really seeing him now. The badge, the tailored suit, the calm confidence, the knowledge that everything that had just happened was about to be dissected, documented, and likely replayed in front of a disciplinary board. Marcus Green finally turned around, cuffed, composed, and utterly unimpressed. "I assume," he said evenly, "someone here has the sense to remove these cuffs before this becomes more embarrassing than it already is." Riley didn't hesitate. He stepped forward and, with trembling fingers, unlocked the restraints. Daniel stood frozen, his throat dry. His world was closing in fast. Green rubbed his wrists slightly, then looked Daniels directly in the eye. "I'll be seeing you again," he said. Not loud, not angry, just a statement of fact. Daniels knew, without a doubt, that the man meant every word, and that his career, maybe more, was hanging by a thread. Daniels removed the cuffs quickly, fumbling with the key, his hands suddenly unsure. The weight of the moment was finally crashing over him like a tide. "Sir, I didn't recognize you." Marcus Green stepped back, rubbing his wrists with calm precision. He didn't take his eyes off Daniels. His gaze wasn't angry. It was worse. Disappointed. Piercing. As if looking straight through the uniform into the man behind it. "That's the problem, officer," Green said, his voice steady but laced with steel. "You saw my skin color and decided I was a threat. You didn't care who I was. You didn't even ask." Daniels tried to force a smile, hoping to defuse the tension with charm. "Come on, sir. It was just a misunderstanding. Things like this happen all the time in the field." Heat of the moment. Green's tone turned sharp, cutting through the air like a blade. "Yes, they do happen all the time. And that's the tragedy, officer. That's what I deal with every day. People just like you, brushing off racial profiling as a misunderstanding." Daniels shifted uncomfortably, but Green wasn't finished. "I asked you why you pulled me over. Do you remember your answer?" Daniels hesitated, glancing toward Riley for backup, but the younger officer stood silently, his face pale, his posture rigid. "You said I matched a suspect," Green continued. "Let's break that down. Did you run my plates? Did you check my ID before putting your hands on me? Or did you just see a black man in a nice car and assume he stole it?" Daniels opened his mouth and closed it. His defense, flimsy as it was, withered before it could form. "You don't have an answer," Green said, "because you never intended to have one. You weren't investigating a crime. You were acting out of bias." Green turned slightly, addressing Riley now, his voice still calm but cold. "How many times have we briefed officers about implicit bias, Officer Riley?" Riley swallowed hard. "Too many times, sir." "Exactly," Green said. "And yet, here we are." The street was quiet now. The earlier hum of suburban life had faded. Even the birds seemed to be holding their breath. A neighbor across the street had taken out a phone, maybe recording, maybe calling someone, it didn't matter. The story had already begun writing itself. "A monitor complaints," Green said, turning back to Daniels. "Racial profiling, use of excessive force, misuse of authority. I've read reports that made my stomach turn. I've watched footage of officers dehumanizing people who did nothing wrong." He took a step closer. "Today, I became the victim of the very thing I've sworn to root out." Daniels stammered, his voice cracking. "It won't happen again, sir. I'll be more careful. I swear." Green looked at him, long and hard. Then he leaned in just enough for his words to land like a sentence. "No," he said flatly. "You won't get the chance." Daniel's breath caught. "What do you mean?" "I mean your career in uniform ends today," Green said. "You abused your badge. You embarrassed this department. And you've proven that you're a liability to every citizen you're sworn to protect." Riley didn't say a word. He knew the decision was final. And just... Green stepped back, adjusted his jacket, and retrieved a card from his inner pocket. He held it out. "Your supervisor will be hearing from me within the hour. File your report. Make sure it's honest. I have the body cam footage. Mine and yours." Daniels didn't take the card. He simply stood there, numb, as Marcus Green walked calmly back to his vehicle, opened the door, and drove away. The sound of the engine faded, and Daniels was left standing in the silence, exposed, ashamed, and already halfway out of a job. Back at the station, the story spread like wildfire. Whispers turned to murmurs. Murmurs turned into full-blown conversations in hallways, locker rooms, and break areas. Officers leaned in close to one another, checking to make sure they weren't being overheard, and then said the name in hushed disbelief. Daniels. Everyone had heard what happened. A racist stop, an unwarranted detainment, and the worst possible target. Marcus Green, the head of internal affairs. The department's most feared name, a man known for his meticulous reports and zero tolerance for misconduct. He wasn't just an authority figure. He was the system's internal conscience. By the end of the day, the story had metastasized across precincts. Even seasoned officers who had once shared drinks and war stories with Daniels now avoided eye contact when he walked through the halls. Within 24 hours, Daniels was placed on immediate suspension, pending an internal investigation. His badge was taken, his gun turned in. He left the building that afternoon in civilian clothes, flanked by a union representative and his own hollow pride. He didn't say a word to anyone. He couldn't. He had not only racially profiled someone, he had done so to the very man responsible for investigating and exposing that behavior. There was no explaining it away. No gray area. No convenient body cam error. It was all there, documented with brutal clarity. To make matters worse, the department itself went into crisis mode. A press release was issued the next morning. "We take all allegations of misconduct seriously. No officer, regardless of rank or tenure, is above accountability. We are committed to rebuilding public trust and enforcing the highest standards of professional conduct within our department." The media descended quickly. Local news channels ran back-to-back coverage of the incident. Photos of Officer Daniels, once featured in recruitment brochures and community outreach events, now flashed on screen as examples of systemic failure. Civil rights advocates took to the airwaves demanding more than just suspension. They wanted reform. They wanted results. Daniel's face became a symbol, not of one bad cop, but of an entrenched problem that could no longer be denied. And yet, amid the storm, Marcus Green remained silent. He didn't hold a press conference. He didn't tweet. He didn't go on TV. Instead, he let his actions speak for themselves. Behind the scenes, Green filed a full, detailed report. Nearly 20 pages. No emotion, no embellishment. Just a clinical, honest accounting of what happened, moment by moment. From a moment he was pulled over to the second Daniels fumbled with the cuffs, all of it recorded and time-stamped, supported by audio and visual evidence. But it was the final line of the report that echoed loudest, not just inside the department, but in City Hall, in courtrooms, in every briefing that followed. "It's not about who I am. It's about who he thought I was." That line was printed on the front page of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. It was quoted by anchors and commentators. It was retweeted by politicians, activists, and citizens who had experienced the same thing, only without the title to protect them. In that single sentence, Green had distilled the heart of the matter. The incident wasn't just about mistaken identity or a bad day. It was about perception, bias, assumptions that had cost lives, careers, and communities. Daniels, once a respected veteran of the force, was now a cautionary tale. He watched his world collapse, not with a bang, but with a slow unraveling, one that he couldn't stop because the damage had already been done. And Marcus Green? He returned to work the next day, not as a victim, but as a reminder that justice wasn't just an idea. It had a face, a name, and a badge that still meant something. Weeks had passed since the incident, but the ripple effects were far from over. The Atlanta Police Department, now under intense public scrutiny, had implemented a series of mandatory reforms: body cam audits, diversity recruitment, community forums. But the most anticipated event came on a Tuesday morning, when every officer, detective, sergeant, and even several command staff members were ordered to attend a department-wide seminar. The auditorium buzzed with uneasy tension. Uniforms filled the rows. Some officers sat with arms crossed, defensive. Others looked genuinely thoughtful, even humbled. At the front of the room stood a man in a dark tailored suit, not imposing in stature, but commanding in presence. Marcus Green. He didn't pace. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Projected behind him was a still image from a dash cam. His own face, illuminated by flashing red and blue lights, standing beside the black BMW during the infamous stop. The photo said more than any headline could. Green turned to face the room. His voice, when he spoke, was calm, but carried the weight of hard-earned authority. "We wear this badge to protect," he said, gesturing to the screen behind him. Not to profile, not to intimidate, not to weaponize a stereotype. The room remained silent. Green let the words settle before continuing. "Look at that image. Look at me. If I were your son, your neighbor, your friend, would you have treated me differently?" He looked out over the sea of uniforms. Some glanced down. Others shifted in their seats. Not one person answered. Green scanned the room slowly. Then his gaze landed on Officer Daniels, seated near the back. Demoted, stripped of his patrol status. He now wore civilian attire, a plain dress shirt with no badge, attending mandatory sensitivity training as part of his disciplinary probation. He looked older than he had weeks ago, diminished. Green's eyes didn't flinch. "You judged me in a second," he said, locking eyes with Daniels. "And it'll take years, years, to rebuild the trust that moment destroyed. Not just between you and me, but between this department and every person who's ever feared they'd be next." Daniels looked down at his hands, his jaw tight. He didn't speak. Green turned back to the rest of the room. "You all saw what happened. You all felt it, whether you admitted it or not. And some of you," he added, voice sharper now, "may have done the same thing yourselves in other neighborhoods on quieter days when no one was watching." Silence. But it wasn't the silence of defiance. It was the silence of reckoning. "This uniform doesn't make you a good person," Green said. "What you do in it does. You're not just officers of the law. You're examples. You're symbols. To children. To the scared. To the hopeful. And right now, our symbol is cracked." He stepped back, letting that truth hang in the air like smoke. "I didn't come here today to scold you," he said. "I came here because I still believe in what this department can be. Not what it has been, but what it must become." He glanced at the dashcam photo one last time. "And understand this," he added, eyes scanning the room one final time. "Justice doesn't always wear a badge. Sometimes it wears a suit, and it watches, and it remembers." Then he turned and walked out. No applause, no fanfare, just the sound of his footsteps echoing through the auditorium. And in that moment, surrounded by silence and stilled breath, it was clear Marcus Green hadn't just led a seminar. He'd lit a fuse for change.